This is not only about a uniform or a rank. It is about resilience, dignity, and the kind of courage that humiliation cannot destroy. She was Second Lieutenant Emily Carter, a young officer barely 24, determined, ambitious, and filled with a quiet strength that had been forged in a lifetime of being underestimated. Her father drove long-haul trucks. Her mother worked double shifts as a nurse. They lived far from any military base, and no one in her family had ever worn the uniform. Yet Emily grew up fascinated by stories of sacrifice, by the voices of veterans in old documentaries, and by the idea that ordinary men and women could choose to carry extraordinary burdens. She dreamed of being part of something greater than herself, and at 24, she made that dream real. Her uniform was crisp, her salute sharp, and her will stronger than most believed. She was not born into military culture, but she was determined to master it. Emily stayed late after drills, studied regulations by lamplight, and treated every soldier she encountered, privates and sergeants alike, with the same respect. In the beginning, her fellow officers saw her as simply another new lieutenant, but slowly, whispers spread. She was different. She listened more than she spoke. She corrected mistakes without belittling. She held her ground when challenged, but never raised her voice out of ego. Colonel Briggs noticed too, but for him, Emily represented everything he despised. A man shaped by decades of outdated traditions, Briggs carried an unshakable belief that women did not belong in leadership positions. He had survived long enough in the military by commanding through fear, by breaking spirits rather than building them. To him, Emily's presence was an insult to the institution he thought he owned. He nitpicked her reports, criticized her posture in front of others, and rolled his eyes when she contributed ideas in briefings. Soldiers watched in silence, knowing they could not challenge him, but they began to notice how Emily endured without flinching. Her quiet strength unsettled him more than open defiance ever could. The breaking point came on an ordinary afternoon, in the officers' barracks. Emily was summoned to Colonel Briggs' office. She straightened her jacket, expecting another tedious lecture about her inexperience. Instead, she walked into something darker. The colonel sneered the moment she entered. His words dripped with contempt, his eyes burning with the satisfaction of someone eager to humiliate. Before she could even process the threat in his tone, he grabbed her arm with startling force and dragged her down the hall. Soldiers glimpsed the scene, but froze, paralyzed by the fear of defying a superior officer. In the cold, tiled silence of the restroom, Briggs committed an act that would forever stain his name. He shoved her forward, and forced her head down into a toilet. As cold water swallowed her face. Humiliation stung deeper than the burn in her lungs as she gasped for air. The water ran down her cheeks, but the shame cut deeper than any wound. For one terrifying moment she wanted to scream, to cry, to collapse. Instead, she rose. Water dripped from her hair and uniform, but her back was straight and her eyes locked onto his. Her voice, steady and controlled, carried more weight than a shout ever could. She told him plainly that he had not disgraced her, but the uniform he wore. Then she walked out, silent and soaked, her dignity untouched. Within hours, whispers swept across the base. Soldiers replayed what they had seen. Some were horrified, others too afraid to speak, but all were struck by her composure. Emily had not screamed, had not begged, had not retaliated. She had walked away unbroken. That night, in the privacy of her small room, Emily wept. Not for herself, but for the men and women forced to serve under someone so dishonorable. She prayed for strength, then sat at her desk and began writing. Her report was not vengeful, not exaggerated, but exact. Every detail, every word steady. When she signed her name, she did so with clarity. She sent it up the chain of command, knowing the consequences could ripple far beyond her own career. The investigation began swiftly. Too many had seen. Briggs tried denial, then justification, claiming it was nothing more than a harsh lesson in toughness. His excuses shattered under the weight of testimony. Soldiers who had once feared him now stepped forward. The truth was undeniable. At the hearing, Emily stood in her pressed uniform before a panel of senior officers. Rakes sat across from her, red-faced and trembling with rage. She did not smirk or gloat. She stood firm, speaking only the truth. Each sentence she delivered was calm, but unflinching, and with every word she revealed the kind of leader Briggs had always been, a man who relied on intimidation, who wielded authority like a weapon instead of a responsibility. The panel listened, and when the verdict came, it was unanimous. Briggs was relieved of command, stripped of his rank, and dishonorably discharged. The decision spread across the base like wildfire. Soldiers who had once been forced into silence now lifted their heads higher. For the first time in years, they felt that justice had been done. Emily, though still young and still learning, had earned something beyond medals or promotions. She had earned respect. Weeks later, as she crossed the parade ground, a small group of soldiers stopped what they were doing. One by one, they raised their hands in salute. It was not duty that moved them, but honor. Emily returned the salute, her chest tightening, her eyes burning with tears she refused to let fall. She had fought not with fists or fury, but with dignity. She had shown what true leadership looked like. In the years that followed, Emily continued her service. She rose through the ranks, led missions overseas, and faced dangers far beyond the safety of home soil. Yet the story that endured among recruits and whispered across barracks was not of her battlefield achievements, but of the day she stood unbroken against humiliation. Her strength became a quiet legend, retold to inspire those who felt overlooked, underestimated, or silenced. This story was never about the act itself. What stunned soldiers was what Emily did afterward. She did not let hatred consume her. She did not allow humiliation to define her. She chose to hold her head high, to remain true to her values, and to show that respect cannot be stolen, it can only be surrendered. Emily Carter never surrendered. Strength is not found only in weapons, muscles, or orders barked in a parade ground. True strength is in standing tall when someone tries to drag you down. It is walking with dignity when others want to see you broken. It is speaking truth when silence would be easier. Emily's story belongs to every soldier, every leader, and every person who has ever been doubted or dismissed. She proved that rank may be handed out, power may be abused, but honor lies deep within the soul, and no one can strip it away. That is why her story will never be forgotten.